My name is Lisa Donaldson. I'm here representing Dublin City University, and as you can see, I do not have Mark Glynn with me today. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it, but I do speak on behalf of both of us. I'm notorious for not giving out my contact details, so I've put them on the first slide so I don't forget, and you'll find me at Doug Donaldson on Twitter. So what I wanted to have a look at today were a couple of things to talk about ePortfolios in general, to talk a little bit then in detail about the DCU journey and what we have done with ePortfolios in our institution, and kind of relate all of that to the concept of open, which Don was speaking about earlier. To put things in context, in the Irish context anyway, rather unfortunately, there's a dearth of research on ePortfolios in general in the Irish context. The only small piece of information that I was able to glean was from the Y1 feedback report in 2016, and that said that the creation of digital artefacts was actually the least used method of assessment in Irish higher education institutes. That's not great, and furthermore, 63% of respondents just don't use them. So we're still pretty much at the stage of exams, maybe multiple choice questions in Mahoodle, but we're very far away from actually using digital artefacts and ePortfolios as a method of assessment for our students. If you compare that to the US, I recommend that book, Catalyst in Action, which was released last year. I recommend it because of a book chapter in there. But in the US, greater than 50% of students are using ePortfolios. So you can see that we're quite a ways behind in Ireland. However, this is Brianne McRae. He is our president in DCU, and he had a dream. And his dream was that he wanted all of his students to have an ePortfolio where they could record the graduate attributes that we would like all of our graduates to have as they exit the university following their 4 years of study. And he had more than a dream. He actually put it into the DCU strategic plan, 2012-2017. So the real impetus for ePortfolio in DCU was for the recording and the subsequent sharing of graduate attributes. So that was where we were coming from. It wasn't specifically around assessment, work placement, any of the probably more standard reasons for implementing ePortfolios for graduate attributes. But the fact that he actually put that into a strategic plan put us under a little bit of time pressure. I work in the Teaching Enhancement Unit along with Mark Glynn and various other colleagues, and it was our remit to introduce and implement ePortfolios across the institution. Unfortunately, we had a number of failed attempts along the way, 2 exactly. And by this point, it was early 2016, with the strategic plan due to run out in 2017, and we still had no ePortfolio. So what we did was, in conjunction with the Institute of Education, which is Ireland's largest education faculty, they were interested in exploring ePortfolios as well. And this was really where our kind of journey into open began, because we worked with them in trying to identify how we were going to use ePortfolios, what platform we were going to use. And as part of that process, Mark Glynn developed this, that's only a snapshot of a matrix that he devised to try and, I suppose, compare and contrast ePortfolio platforms that were available to us. While open isn't specifically referenced, what you can see there is kind of references to sustainability. There's also references to the ability to contribute to the growth of the platform. And a broad user base was very important to us as well. So I'm sure all of us are in a similar boat in that we have looked at or implementing ePortfolio, but if not, or if you have colleagues who are just at the start of that journey, we're more than happy to share that matrix. So at this point, we had it down to two main candidates, and that was Pad and Mahara. Again, to make everything transparent, what we did was we invited all of the faculty across the institution to come in and listen to both members from both, I suppose, vendors, to learn a little bit more about Eportfolios in general and the two different platforms. And the final decision then was based on our own evaluation via the matrix and feedback from across the faculty in the institution. Given that I'm here today, you'll probably find it no surprise that it was actually Mahara that we went with in the end. To give you an idea of time-wise, at this point it's about April, going into May. We just about have a platform selected. We just about have received budget approval. By the time all of those things were actually in place, there was actually only 28 working days before the start of term. So when I say that was a whirlwind 28 days, when I say that there was a lot of reaching out across the Mahara community, because Mahara was new to me, and as you can see here, the Mahara community is great. It's very open. The willingness to share was incredible because we were coming at it, as I said, from pretty much zero knowledge, and we needed to implement within 28 working days. So I put out a plea across the various networks, and I got help from across the globe. I got all kinds of support resources, and without that, we couldn't have gone live when we did. So that's what our Mahara looks like, just to give you a quick glimpse at it. It probably looks quite different to your Mahara. It certainly looks quite different to the out-of-the-box Mahara. But really all we did was customize that homepage. What we did was try to bring it into a similar standing to our Mahoodle theming, same colour schemes, same kind of imagery. But what we did do is we did, as you can see, slightly change the three main buttons on the Mahara interface, and we changed the wording. This is our second iteration of the wording, because following our pilot year, which I'll talk about, following our pilot year, we got some feedback from students, and even just our own interactions with the product, with the platform, we realised we got it wrong. But again, in 28 days, I think we probably did very well to get it live. There was always going to be some things that we needed to change. So that's how our Mahara currently looks like. And internally, we call it Reflect. So if I use the terms interchangeably, forgive me. But we call it Reflect, and also internally we refer to it as a learning portfolio as opposed to an e-portfolio, because we were very keen to keep the focus on the learning rather than the e. So to give you an idea how the implementation went, we went live with a pilot program in 2017. We ended up with 5,500 users over that year, over that academic year, which far surpassed anything that we had expected. We did initially shoulder tap a number of faculty members that had shown interest in using different forms of assessment, that had shown interest in using portfolios as a form of assessment, and others that we knew it would be of benefit to them. But what happened then is it somewhat snowballed, and we had small clusters of small pockets of use, and they began to grow. So, for example, there was one lecturer in the School of Geography who started to use the portfolio. I'll talk about her in a second because she did a phenomenal job. But then word of mouth meant that two others started to use it. So in the end, we ended up with over 5,000 users of the platform. We did our formal launch then at the end of that year, and then at the end of 2018, we had over 10,000 users. Now, that's marginally out of date because I checked this morning on the way here and it's 15,043 is the current count of users in Reflect. So you can see there's been quite an exponential growth. There's a real focus and a real push on Eportfolio within DCU, and we obviously have the benefit of that coming from the head, coming from the president. It's probably a little facetious to say, but it is his baby, and he genuinely wants this to succeed. He really feels that our students will truly benefit from having an e-portfolio where they can track their progress over the course of their college career. Something's going to happen. Yes, there we go. So what I just wanted to take you through is a couple of examples of where we're using ePortfolio, where we're using Loop Reflect or Mahara. So first and foremost, we're using it for assessment. That's really where we started. So it's now being used in assessment across all 5 faculties. Obviously, some of the harder sciences, it was a little bit more difficult to get it in the door. Teaching and nursing, they embraced it from the outset. Because obviously both of those professions, they're looking for, the professional accrediting bodies are looking for portfolios. Now, unfortunately, to date, there's no specification or rules or regulations around an e-portfolio versus portfolio, but still that they're required to have some kind of a composite of their evidence of learning. But interestingly, that lecture that I mentioned in geography, what she did was completely reinvented her whole assessment strategy. And the students were required to document their learning in 6 of their 11 lectures, which is basically 50% of their lectures. They got feedback from the lecturer, and they were required to share it with 3 of their peers. So they got feedback from their peers. So they were really getting learning 360 as part of this process. So it was a complete reimagining of assessment, and the results from that, the failure rate, because it was typically seen as a hard subject, it was hard geography, the failure rate dropped from 15% down to 3%. And the mean grade went from 45 to 59. So it's quite a jump. Now, through word of mouth and less, I suppose, rigorous measures, we're seeing really impressive assignments coming in from students, but they're hard figures that back up the success of using ePortfolio as a method of assessment. So I say it's now being used, I spelled assessment wrong. Apologies for that. Did anyone else notice, or is that just me? It's being used quite extensively now. It's in use in over 30 programs across DCU. And we're still knocking on that door. It's still pockets of use as opposed to blanket use. But again, ePortfolio is not a panacea for everything. It's not going to work for every type of assessment. But we would like to at least introduce the concept to all our faculty as much as possible. We're using it for work placement. In about 75% of our programs in DCU, we have an intra or work placement year, where the students take a year out or 6 months out and go do some work placement. As of this coming year, all interest students will be using the ePortfolio to record their work placement. In some of our faculties, this was piloted 2 years ago actually in the School of Chemistry, which was interesting, again, one of the harder sciences. And the faculty member there, person in charge of intra, wanted to keep touch just with the students, as opposed to the students going and then producing a report when they come back. She got them to do monthly diary entries. So the portfolio was used not only for the final placement report, but also for these monthly diary entries. So any problems that arose could be pinpointed early and could be dealt with. So that's being used. That will be, as I say, most third years will be using the ePortfolio now this coming year. And in the last year, we started to use ePortfolios for our students to record their extracurricular activities. So we introduced an engagement award. We introduced 2 engagement awards, for a bronze and a silver for first year and second year students. So there's a number of requirements that the students need to fulfill. They need to engage with the college society, with various activities, workshops, clubs and societies, and as part of that then they record it in their ePortfolio. And what we've started to do, again only this year, we're kind of coming at it from a different angle in the last 12 months. And there hasn't been so much of me going out to do the hard sell. I should say I'm the only one that looks after ePortfolio within DCU. So it's been real with 15,000 students and 2,000 faculty, and I work part-time. So what I have done is I have worked with students, interested students. So just before I get to the faculty piece, there's no way any of this would work without student involvement and student engagement. So we run annual showcase awards for the students so that they get recognition for their work more widely. And there's vouchers and Beats headphones and, you know, things that appeal to students these days. But more importantly, they get a chance to showcase the work that they've put in. We then also have, with their permission, exemplars of really excellent ePortfolios then to share with others, which are now on the help site so that all students can benefit. But also what it gives me is a heads up of interested and engaged students. So I reached out to those students who applied to put their ePortfolio into the showcase and asked them were they interested in becoming student e-turns. So last year I had 6 student e-turns, which helped me across the year with everything from designing posters for this year's showcase to going into classes and introducing the concept of ePortfolios to new students that were going to start to use it for assessment. It was also, again, through feedback of the previous crop of e-turns that we changed the wording and we revamped our dashboard. So they have been of huge help to me. But back to the faculty. So we're trying to, as opposed to me going out to individual faculty members and trying to say, ePortfolios are great, you really should use them as part of your assessment. As you can imagine, and I'm sure you're in the same situation often, it's hard to get the message across. So what we've done this year is we've started to embed ePortfolio into things that faculty are doing. For example, the President's Awards for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. So we've got the best of the best that have been nominated for President's Awards. This year they had to design, well, we gave them a template, but they had to design an ePortfolio to showcase the evidence of all of their fantastic work. And our hope is engaging them with ePortfolio to record their own development, and for the actual awards, they will start to see the benefits that can accrue with ePortfolio use, and they'll be more interested in using it within their classes. So that's the hope. Back on the theme of open, we reached out to a number of institutions and they reached out to us so that we could continually improve the usability of Mahara. So back, I think it was about 2 years ago now, we worked with the University of Sussex and we created a new series of reports to improve the reporting capability within Mahara. Because we wanted to know, I gave you the number of users that are on our system, but how many are active? So we wanted to get a finer detail on who our users were, how they were using Mahara, so that we could support them better. So that was one development that we looked at, and another is a template push plugin that we developed with the University of Limerick, because I develop a lot of templates, and for scaffolding new users to Mahara, we found that templates are the way to go. They really need that kind of structure and support and scaffold. However, getting templates into the hands of students was a little bit more of a difficult task. So we managed to cut down the number of clicks for the student by developing this plugin so that it's now a pressable button by the admin or the lecturer to push out that template, and it just sits there waiting for the student ready to engage with it. And that's the beauty of open, where you can actually engage with the development and improvement of a platform. So both of those developments are already in Core Mahara. And this year, and in fact I think based on the last email, we're only about a week or two away, which is really exciting. We have a little bit of magic coming, literally magic. So as I said, I would develop a lot of templates. I would sit down with a faculty member and try and decide how they want to imagine their ePortfolio assessment. And in each case, what I found myself asking is, so what kind of evidence is the student is likely to give you when you ask this question or when you put in that section on the page? And they'll go, maybe text, could be a video, occasionally a PDF, it could be anything realistically. And all I could say was, well, we better put in a text block then, because we had to put something in. So let's put in a text block. At least they can put in a picture, they can put in a hyperlink, and they can put in text. It's probably the most flexible, really. So, but I was very conscious then when I went into a class to say, this is what you're going to create. This is your template. In here you can put in text and a picture. If you want to do anything else, if you want to create a video-based reflection instead of a text-based reflection, well then you're going to have to delete this block, go over here, get this block and drag it on. Is that okay? And they're looking at me blankly. And it's also extending the amount of instruction that I need to give to the students. I'm trying to make it simple. So we got a little bit of funding as part of an Erasmus project, and I thought about this idea of a magic block. I had no better term for it, so I just called it a magic block that could become anything that the student wanted it to become. But I could still put in the placeholder for it, and they then decided what it became, what kind of evidence they wanted to store in that place. Am I explaining that right? You get where I'm coming from? Okay. So the very exciting news is it's coming. My laptop got wiped over the last week, which is why I would show you the video, only it's not working on my machine. So I just grabbed a screenshot or two from the upcoming video, which I think Sam is going to show you later. But this is what it now looks like. So this is your blank page. Yeah? So what you don't have is all your blocks on the left-hand side anymore. What you do have is a big plus over in the right-hand side. And all the student will need to do, or rather all I will need to do if I'm creating a template for the student, is click on that plus. And this is the new look of the magic block, which is going to become the default block in Mahara. So I can put in this placeholder, but I don't need to specify is it text, image, PDF, or anything else. I just save it right there. And then the student is going to be able to decide when they click on edit and go in here, they decide what evidence they want to display. So that's the kind of technical pieces that we've been involved in because of Open, but we're very involved within DCU because we were one of the first institutions really to fully embrace Eportfolio, and was conscious that there were others and we learn more from one another. So back in 2017, I set up Mahara IRL. Then I realised we were being a little exclusionary. There's a lot of Eportfolio users across the island of Ireland, and I didn't want, and we're all doing the same thing, regardless of the platform. So that was rebranded as Eportfolio Ireland last year. And the goal with that is to bring everybody together. So we can share information and we can support one another, and ideally we can collaborate and develop collaborative resources as well. So we've done a lot of that. We've had a number of face-to-face events, we've had a number of online meetings, we've developed a lot of collaborative resources, which I'm going to show and share in a second. Oh, just as well I had extra time, isn't it? Fine. And our Sam here came as our keynote for our first unconference, which was Ireland's first unconference on Eportfolio, and I think perhaps the first globally that was purely powered by technology. I still haven't found any other that's done it that way. So that's our goal, is to get together and discuss and collaborate and work together to make more of Eportfolio in Ireland. We want to further Irish Eportfolio research, which I'll touch on in a second. But we have written up and talked up between podcasts and articles what we have done with regards to these face-to-face events, and specifically the unconference. So these are some of the outputs that we have worked on collaboratively. So the rubric came out of the unconference, and the Eportfolio based assessment ebook came out of the unconference. Both of which were, I suppose, goals of mine going into the conference. I wanted collective input for all of this. There's any number of Eportfolio rubrics out there, but what I wanted was the best of the best and put them all together. So that's what we did. And the Eportfolio assessment ebook you will find on the DCU website on the Teaching Enhancement Unit section. The idea behind that is when I'm conversing with faculty, trying to share with them the many ways they could use Eportfolio. If they can't see it, they just can't see it, and they don't want to implement it. So what I wanted to do was capture examples of Eportfolio in practice. And I've got some super examples in there that were donated by Eportfolio users across Ireland and the UK. And it's a useful resource that I share with faculty to show how others are using it. And then as part of kind of the faculty professional development push that we've started this year, again, we got a little bit of funding for this, enough funding to create these. So there's one for everybody in the audience. So if you want to just throw that back behind you. So what these simply are is, if you are, and we are encouraging all our faculty now to develop their own professional portfolio. Pretty soon, there is negotiations at high level that will be a requirement for the promotion prospects within DCU. So there's the carrot and the stick. Right now, we're just encouraging people that for their own development, it's a really good idea to have a professional portfolio. So this is a few of the resources that we created to support that, and it's drawn across the most important elements that are found in the DCU promotion framework, on the Advanced HE Fellowship, and across the National Forum Irish framework as well. They may be of use to you. We're all about open again, open evaluation. We did a Twitter poll to see how is Eportfolio Ireland, if in any way, impacting Eportfolio practice. And it's nice to see that 44% of people have engaged with us in some way, and it's made a difference to their practice. And 56% say, not yet, but I hope to. So we're hoping to expand that as we go on. And finally, on open evaluation, this is what I was referring to earlier on. Right at the beginning, I said there was no research out there about the current levels of practice, what platforms are being used. There's practically nothing out there. The next 2 days, once I fly home tonight, are going to be spent locked in a room with my colleagues in Eportfolio Ireland, and we propose to launch a nationwide survey to ascertain exactly that. What is the current standing of Eportfolio across the island of Ireland? So hopefully we'll be able to share that with you next year. Ta-da. That's me. Any questions or comments, I'll happily take them. Yes?
Primarily, where do students get support with learning how to use the system? From you? You do all 15,000?
Me and my e-turns, yes. Not so much. What we do is we're probably quite proactive about it. The last 2 years, I managed to get into the orientation schedule. So at least they'd heard of Reflect as a platform, which is a start. I work pretty much one-on-one with faculty members. So they come to me, we design a template together, or we discuss what they want to do. When they are ready to introduce that to their students, me or another e-turn will go into the class. So then we do it on a class-by-class basis. As I say, this wouldn't happen without the e-turns, because if I'm not available, they are. And then we run monthly drop-in clinics, which haven't been there's not much take-up, to be honest. But there's a huge amount of support resources up on the help page, and I designed it so that it was pretty self-explanatory. It's been hugely beneficial. The template push plugin, that's taken so much pain out of the equation. So there's less and less support required, actually, over the last year or two. But yeah, it's myself and the interns. Yeah?
What's the main reason for wanting to use Eportfolios more for assessment?
It's actually now currently in this strategic plan. So the last strategic plan was that the focus was to be on graduate attributes. I have to say we haven't quite ticked that box. We've gotten an Eportfolio in place, but graduate attributes aren't really living in the university just yet. They're not quite embedded into programme learning outcomes, so it's difficult for the faculty members to try and require the students to document those. To my mind, I always wanted to embed it across DCU for assessment. So it was more a push from the Teaching Enhancement Unit on the assessment piece, purely because having used, for my Masters, I had to create an Eportfolio, and it was 15 credits. So there was a huge amount of value placed on the development of the Eportfolio. So personally, I can attest to the benefits of it, having gone back year on year to stuff that I had recorded in my Eportfolio. So I know personally, firsthand, the benefits of Eportfolio. So for assessment, so that was my main push. As I say, we're now trying to get the faculty professional development in the back end, in the hope that they will then see the benefits and look at it for assessment then. Anything else? All good?